Good night, everyone. We will start by singing. We will start by singing hymn number 254, The Great Physician Now is Near. And as we sing this song, let us be reminded that God is our great physician and He can help us spiritually, mentally, and socially.
Time flies. It is our last night already. Now, for this evening, our scripture reflection would be Jeremiah 33 and verse 6. And this scripture is our gospel of health. It says, behold, I will bring it health and cure, and I will cure them, and I will reveal unto them the abundance of peace and truth. All right, so you hear the gospel within this text. It's a promise of restoration, a promise of cleansing and pardoning of iniquities. So be not afraid to respond to the loving call of God. God has been calling us. He's calling us. When the Spirit pricks you, grieve not the Spirit. Just respond to the call of God. He says, my peace I bring, I live with you. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth. The world is offering a peace, but Jesus is saying, I don't give that kind of peace. He says, let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. All right, so this evening we'll go straight into our presentation. All right, we will not linger anymore. After the presentation, we will have a exchange of gifts. All right, so without further ado, I will just introduce the speaker for the last time. But I hope it's not the last time. For this series, all right? For this series. Now, Dr. Eddie Ramirez, he's a medical doctor, a renowned medical doctor. He's well known. He's a research scientist, a published author, and international speaker. He's associated with the Weimar University, the Charles Drew University, and the Semayuk University. His major research interest has been how food and lifestyle have the ability to prevent and reverse physical and also mental disease. Now, his research has resulted over 165 published research projects, which he has shared in. He's sharing it with us now, so I can say 100 countries. He is in the editorial board of the journal Frontiers in Psychology, and his work is well featured around many television shows, all right? Well, he displayed his book here, last night. He sold out. It was sold out, all right? But we that have, we will share. We won't be greedy, all right? So I present to you Dr. Eddie Ramirez.
Well, good evening. Today I had a chance to go a little bit around the island and went up to Brimstone, Fort of Brimstone, very beautiful view from up there, and a little bit there, Frigate Bay there also. Beautiful beaches that are located there. Here you can see the comparison between Mexico and St. Nevis. There's a big difference. Only 100 square kilometers, miles. It's St. Nevis and St. Kitts. And compared to 761,000 miles. So you can see much bigger. Let me show you a few pictures of Mexico. So Mexico also has beautiful beaches. It has very big, deep canyons. And it's also part of what is called the Ring of Fire. So it's this ring that where most of the volcanoes are located. This town, you know, it was next to a volcano. The volcano came and the whole town got buried in the lava. There's many places that are very fertile. In the south part of Mexico is very similar to here. Nice and green, like here, lots of water everywhere. And there's this interesting formation called the cenotes. So it's an underwater river that dissolves the surface, and there's these big holes that form there. You can swim there, but it's very cold, that water. In the north, there are deserts. Very dry, the north part of Mexico. And look at this one. These are some hot springs. You can sit down there in the wonderful hot springs and take the view there from the valley there while you enjoy the hot water. And this is close to where I grew up. notice that there's not too many trees. Where I grew up, there's not too many trees. There's a few, but not too many. Look at this beach. It's called the Hidden Beach. Only a few people at a time can enter there. And this is where I grew up. Ensenada. Notice there's not too many trees. There are some, but not too many. In this part of Mexico, it only rains 20 days in the whole year. It is very, very dry compared to this place. Here you can find the biggest crystals in the world. And this is in the bottom of a mine. There was a lot of flooding down there. And when they removed the water, these huge crystals form. You cannot stay there longer than 15 minutes. It's too hot because, as you know, it's underwater. And this plant is where they make a very popular poison called tequila. It's not good for you. Avoid it. But before it's tequila is something called agave nectar. That's good for you. It's an excellent sweetener. So they cut the top part of this plant and it starts to accumulate there, and then they boil that. That's where they get the agave nectar. This is the tallest mountain in Mexico, 5,636 meters. And it's possible to walk it all the way to the very top of this mountain. Here are some more volcanoes in the northern part of Mexico. And look at this algae. It transformed the color of the water into this beautiful pink color. And this is an oasis town. So everything is dry, it's a desert around, but because there's some water sources there, suddenly everything becomes nice and green. And these are very fascinating. All the monarch butterflies from Canada and America, they migrate down to Mexico to spend the winter there. Now, how do they know where to go? Have you seen the brain of a butterfly? Somebody more powerful than the butterfly, isn't it? Needs to be the one guiding this butterfly down there. So you go there, and there's this millions of butterflies there, waiting for Canada and America to get warm, and then they fly back again once it warms up. And there's still some volcanoes that are active there. Like this one is not all the time active, but once in a while it wakes up and throws a bunch of smoke and a little bit of lava. And then this one is a volcano that you can see when you land into Mexico City. Let's see if you can say the name of this volcano. It's called the Popocatépetl. Popocatépetl. Or you can call it by the short name. They call him the Popo. Much easier, isn't it? Popocatépetl. And unfortunately, the book, which I have a few of these books in Spanish. If anybody wants to learn some Spanish, I have a few in Spanish left. I know there's somebody that was telling me they wanted to get some in Spanish yesterday. And let me tell you briefly how I got into what I do. I originally studied computer science. That was back in the 1990s, when there was very few people that actually knew about computers, where the internet wasn't even popular around. And when I was in my last semester of computer science, all my friends started running, so I started running with them. But it ended up being that I was always the last place among my friends. And I said, this is not right. You know, I need to do something to improve my time. This is very, embarrassing that I'm always the last place among my friends. So what I did, I went to the library of the university to read what are the people that are winning the race, what are they doing? That's when I found out all these Kenyans and Ethiopians, they're all on a plant-based diet. That's one of their secrets. So I went ahead and switched my diet to see what would happen if I switched my diet. And sure enough, I started becoming so fast, I started getting some first places in my town. It was not psychological. I could see it, how my times improved tremendously. And not only that, it was my best semester on my undergraduate. All my notes became top notes, top notes, top notes, top notes. I could see how my mind was changed as a result of switching my diet. And not only that, it was a whole process that I started enjoying very much. And I finished my bachelor's degree in computer science, and I applied for a master's degree in computer science. They liked my profile. They even offered me a full scholarship. And while I was waiting to start my master's program, I went to visit for the first time a lifestyle center. I've never been in any of these places. And this place was located in the southern part of California. When the doctor in charge of the institution heard that I knew about computers, immediately he approached me. I was supposed to be there just for the weekend visiting my brother that was studying there. And he was like, I have many computer problems here. Would you mind helping me that you're here this weekend? I said, sure, I'll be happy to help you. In 1 weekend, I fixed most of his major computer problems. He was so impressed, he offered me a job on the spot. And to me, this was very confusing. I'm supposed to start my master's program. He wants me to stay and work with him. I cannot do both at the same time. What am I going to do? I decided not to do the master's program, but rather stay there, and my whole life changed as a result of that. When I started seeing what was happening in that place, diabetes was being reversed, hypertension, obesity, many autoimmune conditions, depression, and multiple other problems were getting better. I said to myself, you know what? Computers are nice, but this is what I need to do with my life. And that's when the desire came to go into medical school and prepare myself further, which the Lord opened some years later. I also work in this lifestyle center that is located next to these famous Faces of the Presidents. Just 15 minutes from there is located this lifestyle center. I'm still involved with them. I'm in their board of this institution. Also, I work in Hawaii. We were doing lifestyle programs for people from Asia and America. And I also live in Norway for many years. That's why I speak Norwegian, because I used to live there. In fact, I usually go once a year to give him a hand. It's still at the lifestyle center called Fredheim. That's where my first daughter was actually born, in Norway. And I've been involved with Weimar for many years, as well as with Dr. Netley for the past 20 years. I've been giving him a hand. In fact, if you want to hear a little testimony, it's a 4-minute testimony of how the Lord was able to transform a whole community using the health message. This is a short 4-minute video where I tell that story. Just go to that QR code and you should be able to watch that video. Also, reminder that there is that research. I'm going to be sharing some of my research. There's a Twitter account, the YouTube, and the Instagram page.
Can you go back to that real quick?
Yes. And also, reminder, what I shared with you yesterday, I put 2 guides of how to switch to that plant-based diet on my Twitter account. Just go and visit my Twitter account. You should be able to get those guides. This one from PCRM, excellent guide. You just go to that page and you download the whole PDF for free. And there's a second one there. Also, this is a very good one. This vegetarian starting kit telling you how you can do the transformation, what to watch out, and what to include to have that wholesome diet. Look at this one, how that caffeine, especially that evening caffeine, can affect the quality of your sleep. It's not the best thing for you. And there's also another book that I wrote. Unfortunately, I didn't bring any, but you can hear the story behind that book in this other QR code. This book is called The Blueprint for Revival. And basically, we tell the story how this church in Australia that was literally dying. There were only 14 old people in that church, in a big, big church. And through using the tools of the health message, that book was able to be, that church was able to be transformed from 14 senior members to a thriving 140-member church. So we tell the story there in that little booklet. Watch the video, and then you will hear, the information that basically is shared there in that booklet. So let's talk about mental health and diabetes today. The reality is that depression is increasing worldwide. The last statistic says 400 million people suffering from depression. You're more likely to be cured of cancer than of depression, says this article, because depression is becoming chronic. In fact, if you just treat depression with medication, according to this study, only 28% of the people feel healed. Must be something else you should be able to do. That's what we're going to be learning today. Let me start this lecture with the story of a friend of mine. Her name is Christy. Christy grew up in a good home, but started hanging around the wrong type of friends, and very soon she was involved in addictive behaviors. Her life started spiraling out of control to the point that when she went to get medication, they put her in a bunch of medications, but still she was not feeling well. So her parents deceived her. They told her, Christy, we want to take you to a spa so you could get some massage and some good therapy. And they brought her to our program, not to a spa, which we do a few things that the spas do, but it is not a spa definitely. So because she felt tricked, she tried to escape from a program. So we got her. She tried to escape a second time. We got her again. She tried to escape a third time. We got her again. She tried to escape a fourth time, and we got her again. So we had a staff meeting, and we said, we need to do something about this Christy, because if not, she's going to escape. So we decided that one of the staff members was going to sleep in the door of her room. So in case you would wake up in the middle of the night, and she would stumble there in the staff, and she was being able to be stopped. And something happened to Christy. She felt touched, and she really understood that we really wanted to help her. So she started cooperating with the program. And now started enjoying the walks and the good food and the massage and the hydro and all these things we were doing. To the point that when she finished, she definitely started feeling much better. In fact, she requested to stay a little bit longer to try to catch up for the first days that she was being rebel, against all these changes we were trying to do on her. And today, Christy is depression-free. She doesn't take a single medication. She is happily married. She just finished her graduate degree. And she uses her free time to teach others about how to prevent mental health problems. And if you want to hear her testimony, just Google these words. She just recently did this interview with 3ABN Australia. So just Google by the word of their testimony, Christy Christopher. You Google those words, you should be able to find this very interesting interview, and you can hear from her words all the story that she went through. And here, this is one of my research. Here you can see what happens when you change your lifestyle intensively in only 10 days. This is tremendous improvement. You can see on the left side that people have moderate high depression. In only 10 days, the depression goes away. And our research shows that 84% of the people with depression are going to be depression-free. What about that percentage that doesn't improve? Those are the ones that I call the disobedient patients. They're like Christy. They don't want to do the things. If you don't do the things, I'm sorry, we're not magicians, You need to do your part. You need to do the diet and the exercise and the sleep and all these things that we are prescribing. And then on the other side, you can see anxiety, how it also improves quite fast as we attack the root causes of depression. And this is the international guideline, how we make a diagnosis of depression. So you can see here, the way we diagnose depression, there needs to be 5 out of these 9 symptoms present in order to make a diagnosis of depression. So this diagnosis is how it is done all over the world. In fact, if you want to take this test for yourself, just Google the following words. PHQ-9. PHQ-9 depression. If you Google those words, you will find the test, and it's going to ask you those 9 questions specifically, and then it will tell you don't have depression, you have mild depression, moderate depression, or severe depression. So go ahead and find that test and do it if you have questions regarding mental health. But one of the things that this test doesn't tell us are the causes of depression. What's causing the depression? It only tells us, which symptoms are present, but not the causes. So that is what we documented in this article. You can find it there on my ResearchGate page. In this article, we are documenting the causes of depression. The way we wrote this scientific article is the following. We asked the question, what has been documented as causes for depression in the scientific literature? So we went and searched, and we found that there's more than 100 different causes of depression. So what we did, we grouped these 100 plus causes into 10 groups. And it is our hypothesis that if you have 4 or more out of this group of 10, you're going to have a mental health problem. So let's go briefly through those 10 root causes of depression. So we have the genetic factor. The genetic factor, you're going to have this factor if you have family that had depression, close family, or family that attempted or did commit suicide. That's the case, you may be carrying some of this genetic factor. 2, developmental. You will qualify for the developmental if you have suffers any type of abuse when you were growing up. You qualify for developmental if you didn't grow up with both biological parents. You qualify for developmental if you are a female and your first menstrual period was before the age of 11, that would qualify also for this developmental. Now here's the good news, bad news. Bad news is that we cannot change these two. This is things in the past. The good news is that how many of these factors you need to have present? How many we say? 4 or more. So even if you have these two, that doesn't mean that you're destined to be depressed for the rest of your life. You can make changes to the other potentially reversible factors, number 8 in number. Next one, lifestyle. You qualify for lifestyle factor if you don't have a regular exercise program, if you are not exposing yourself to bright light on a regular basis, if you are not breathing fresh air from the outside, you spend too much time inside of buildings. Question, can you change the lifestyle factor? Yes, that one you can completely change. Next one, circadian rhythm. To qualify for circadian rhythm, if you have insomnia on a regular basis, if you don't have order in your meals, you're eating at all times, eating between meals, I will qualify for that. Or you are not regular at going to bed and waking up. Question, can you put order in your life? Is that possible? Yes, it is possible to put order in your life. Next one, addictions. You qualify for addictions if you are using any of the illegal drugs or certain legal drugs like marijuana, that will qualify for that. Tobacco, that will qualify for that. Caffeine, that will qualify for that. Alcohol, that will qualify for that. Also, certain prescribed legal medications like benzodiazepines, alprazolam, lorazepam, opioid medications. This type of medications affect the frontal lobe, as we're going to be talking about in a minute, and that can trigger depression. And pornography and this type of things. Question, can you overcome addictions? Yes, it is possible to overcome addictions. Next one, nutrition. You qualify for this nutrition factor if you are eating too many animal products. I will qualify for this. If you have an addiction to simple carbohydrates, I will qualify for this one. If you are not eating certain key nutrients. Among the most important key nutrients include omega-3, folate, iron, vitamin B, calcium, and very important one, tryptophan. Tryptophan is the building block of a chemical called serotonin, and people with depression have too little serotonin. So you need to eat much more of that tryptophan. Where do you find that tryptophan? The king of tryptophan happens to be tofu. Somebody that is depressed needs to be eating tofu because it's loaded with that tryptophan. Can you change your diet? Is that possible? Yes. Yes, it's possible. Toxins. Among the common toxins, you find lead, cadmium, but the most common one happens to be mercury. We'll be talking a little bit more about it in a minute. Then this other one is 3 factors in one. One, social factor. You don't have social support. You don't belong to a social group like a church that meets on a regular basis. So we're talking about the famous Zoom church. It doesn't cut it. You need to be among human beings, for it to work properly. 2, you are under constant stress because of your work, because of your relationships, and so forth. Being under that constant stress is not good for you. I will qualify for that factor. And or grief. You lost something very important for you, and you have not been able to overcome that loss. That could range from a part of your body, could range from a relative of yours, could range from an object, a work, or something related to that you have not been able to overcome. That would qualify for that. And then we have the exception of the rule. We said that you need 4 or more factors, isn't it? Yeah. But this one by itself can cause depression. You qualify for medical condition if you have a diabetes that is not well under control, if you have any type of cancer, if you have hepatitis C, if you have problems with your kidneys or problems with your liver, if you have autoimmune problems, if you have hormone problems, any of these factors, what you need is to get in control. Many times you're going to need the help of a competent, knowledgeable health professional to help you get back on your right track. And finally, frontal lobe. You qualify for frontal lobe if you are doing things that suppress the frontal lobe. Among the things that suppress the frontal lobe include doing things that go against your conscience, that will qualify for frontal lobe suppression. Other things that suppress the frontal lobe is music that is syncopated. Music that makes you kind of dance, that is syncopated music. That music suppresses your frontal lobe. There's a lot of science about that. And also wrong sexual behavior. Sexual relationships outside of the context of marriage suppresses the frontal lobe. That's one group of things that affect the frontal lobe. Or 2, you're not doing enough things to improve your frontal lobe. Those could qualify for that. So,
you need to tell them what the frontal lobe does.
That's where I'm going to.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So, the research has shown that anything that affects the frontal lobe negatively impacts your mental health. So you can see it here in an imaging study. You can see on the left somebody that is depressed. So the frontal lobe of the brain is the foremost part of your brain, above your eyes. That's where the frontal lobe is located. And the frontal lobe is what makes us human. That's where we have our character. That's where we have our will. That's where we have our conscience. That's where we have our spirituality. That's why Satan is going after your frontal lobe. He wants to suppress the frontal lobe of your brain. And you can see in this imaging study, the frontal lobe is in the very top part of that brain. Notice that when there was depression, there was very little activity there. While when the patient recovered, notice a tremendous activity, that color that is like red and orange, it means there's a lot of activity in that frontal lobe. So the question has been, does the little activity of the frontal lobe causes depression, or does the depression causes little activity in that frontal lobe? Research has been very clear that things that suppress the frontal lobe increase the risk of depression. So here you can see the famous frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe is the biggest part of your brain. 33 to 35% of your whole brain is frontal lobe. So that's why it's very important to keep that frontal lobe healthy. For example, look at this interesting stuff. You can find this by going on my YouTube page. Just go to my YouTube page, you can find the whole video there. So this reporter, she is from ABC News, which is a mainline television station, takes this study called the functional MRI. Basically, is showing how the blood flow of the brain is taking place. And then this lady takes just 1 cup of coffee and repeats the functional MRI. This is the brain before the caffeine. Notice the redness there, that's blood in the brain, very good. That's the way that your brain should look like. This is the brain after 1 cup of coffee. 40% of decrease of blood flow to the brain. You think that's good? No, because your frontal lobe is not getting enough blood. You're more prone to depression, you're more prone to this type of things that affect the frontal lobe, like gossip, sin, and so forth. Here you guys don't have problems with gossip, isn't it? You're more likely to gossip if you are under the influence of caffeine. And talking about the neighbor, you know, and things that you shouldn't be talking about. So here you can see, very interesting study, how when they compare running versus taking antidepressant, both had almost the same effect. And now you know why. When you run, you increase the blood flow to the brain, therefore improving the frontal lobes improves your mental health. So anything that improves your frontal lobe is good in the prevention and treatment of depression. In the old days, look at what they used to do. They used to insert this instrument under the eye, reach the brain, and smash your brain. And they would call that therapy. Which was the opposite, because the people that went through this procedure end up severely depressed because they were messing around the frontal lobe. You know this President John F. Kennedy? He had a sister. They took her to do this thing. Just because her stepmom didn't like her, she took her there and they did that to her. And they completely ruined her life, you know? Totally unnecessary. So another thing that helps is hydrotherapy, the wise use of hot and cold. Here you can see in this study how one session of hydrotherapy, as I reported here in my tweet, improved depression. And that effect lasted for 6 weeks. Fantastic, isn't it? The power of hydrotherapy. That's why our patients, we actually give hydrotherapy to our patients twice a day to our patients of depression. So when you do that hot and cold, you have that advantage. Another thing that can mess up your frontal lobe is too much use of electronics. Watch out for that. So these things can be a blessing, but when you abuse them, can have a very negative effect on your mental health. Here's a few more. Nicotine has a negative effect on your frontal lobe. Not good for anxiety or depression, as we documented in our study. And vaping, same story. Vaping increases depression symptom among people who never smoked cigarettes. Just the fact you start using that stuff, it's going to have a frontal lobe suppressing effect, increasing your risk of depression and anxiety. This one, how the right type of music has healing power. You study, you learn that Satan was in charge of the choir of heaven. He knows very well the effect of music. And as he left heaven, he started composing all kinds of things to mess up your frontal lobes. You need to be careful what type of music you listen to. So there's music that uplifts and improves the frontal lobe. There's music that has exactly the opposite effect. This is my study, very interesting study. In this study, we're documenting how people that listen to music like MTV and VH1 have double the risk of smoking. The reason why green is two things. One, because when you watch those videos, they make it so cool to smoke, those artists, isn't it? And I want to be like the artist. What the artist does, that's what I want to do. So you have that influence there, you know? Number two is because the nicotine, as I was explaining to you, has a frontal lobe suppressing effect. The music has a frontal lobe suppressing effect, so more likely to get in addiction. Marijuana, same story. Has a very negative effect on your frontal lobe. I'll show you an interesting study in a minute. Here, cannabis, according to this JAMA publication, is linked to mental illness. Increases your risk of mental disease, the use of marijuana. And this other one, I'm going to step on some toes on this one. What is my study? In this study, we're documenting how excessive consumption of fish has a negative effect on your mind. And in my study, I cite another study that says that today, every fish has some level of mercury. Unfortunately, all the junk that we throw in the ocean come back to the fish. That's the sad reality of our world. There's this very interesting documentary. This is from PBS, the public station in America. Very, very interesting documentary about the Faroe Islands. The Faroe Islands are some islands located above England. They are a colony of Denmark. These people are clean people. They're not throwing junk in the ocean and things like that. Yet, they start documenting that the IQ, the intelligence of the children in the island was decreasing. And after checking multiple factors, their conclusion of the research was that their high intake of sea products was bringing toxicity to the females that were pregnant and to the children that were in development, and that was affecting the development of their brains. Notice this fascinating study here of biomagnification. Mr. Edwards knows about this lake, Clear Lake in California. He used to live very close to that place. It's called Clear Lake because it's clear. It's not polluted. Yet when they check the water, there's this toxin called DDT. DDT is a cousin of DDT. DDT is banned, you cannot use DDT, but they still use DDT. So when they checked the amount of this toxin in the water, it had 0.02 parts per million in the water. The microscopic organisms that were living in the water had 5 parts per million. Notice the increase is not linear, it's exponential. The fish that were eating those microscopic organisms had between 40 to 300 parts per million. And the carnivorous fish that ate those other fish had up to 2,500 parts per million. Now they didn't report it, the other ones, but what about the humans that eat those fish? They're going to have even much higher levels. There's this excellent documentary. If you're interested in the topic, just Google it on your YouTube. It's called Norwegian Salmon, World's Most Toxic Food. And it talks about how, by the way they raise the salmon in Norway, I can tell you because I used to live there in Norway. And look at this fascinating study. Journal Nature is the top journal in the world. They found that when these birds, called the ibis, they were exposed to mercury, they started behaving in an homosexual fashion. Interesting, isn't it? So this is something very worrisome today, you know. Now, interesting, San Francisco still has mercury poisoning because they used to process a lot of gold, and one of the things they use for gold processing to separate it is mercury. So those waters are very polluted with mercury. So watch out for that. This one, alcohol, how it has a negative effect on the mental health. And this is another one of my studies, how violating your conscience increases your risk of depression. Now let me show you this fascinating study. Here we're seeing this imaging study. We're seeing the brain from the bottom up. So you see the thing there in the middle? That's where the spine connects to the rest of the brain. This is a normal brain, has uniform colors and uniform the whole brain. Notice what happens if you use alcohol just on the weekends for 17 years. Can you see the tremendous negative effect that that has on that brain? Here is what marijuana will do. 3 years of using marijuana 4 times a week. Now, in the top part, notice the frontal lobe suppression. Now, this is not an anatomical image. In other words, if you open this skull, you don't see a hole there. But rather, it's a functional image. You're seeing the function of the different areas of the brain. But notice the tremendous suppression of that frontal lobe. What if you use marijuana more temperately? There's such thing as that. Using it just on the weekends for 10 years still has a very negative effect. And notice in the upper part, those 2 areas there are the frontal lobes of that brain. And one of the things that really causes negative effect on the function of the brain is metabolism. Things that impair metabolism impair the function of the brain. One of the common things that impair metabolism happens to be diabetes, which sadly is a common problem in this island. So, what is that diabetes? It's basically when too much glucose, too much sugar is circulating in your blood. In the old days, before we used to be able to pick the finger and test that, doctors had to taste the urine. What were they tasting for?
Sugar.
If it was sweet, that's how they would do the diagnosis. As a doctor, I'm very happy for that new machine. I don't need to do this. Or the second test they would do, they would put the patient to urinate next to an ant hole. And what would happen? If the ants came, it means they had diabetes. So, these are the guidelines that you guys use here. Imagine you guys use the European numbers. So, what you do, you test the blood either fasting or after eating, and if that fasting glucose starts going more than 5.5, that is what we call a pre-diabetes, and if it's more than 7, that is diabetes when it's fasting. And there's multiple factors that interfere with diabetes, from your genetics, to your family history, your ethnicity, your age, if you had diabetes when you were pregnant. But there are many other things that we can modify. We can modify physical activity, we can lose weight, we can change our eating habits, we can control our hypertension, we can stop smoking, and we can make changes to our lifestyle so we don't have to depend so much on medication. And the problem is that when the glucose is too high, starts affecting multiple things. One of the things that excess glucose does, the excess glucose starts to stick all over the cells in your body excessively. As one researcher say, it's like getting cooked. The more sugar that sticks to your cells, the quicker you're gonna die. That's why it's so important to keep that glucose under control because of that. Now, some people say, but doctor, there's nothing to eat. Yes, there's plenty to eat. We need to avoid high glycemic foods, right? High glycemic foods means foods that when you eat them, immediately go into your bloodstream. So they cause your blood glucose to go up. Rather, we need to eat low glycemic foods, like your fresh fruits and vegetables, and especially those legumes we've been talking about. Soy, tofu, garbanzos, beans, peas, lentils. Those are the best friends of the diabetic. Nuts, whole grain breads, protein-rich foods, and healthy fats. Let's put numbers. Here you can see that we use the 100 and we put that on white bread. So, what we need to do, we need to be eating foods around the 70 or less. That's where most of our foods should be eaten. Now notice that peanuts, that's a legume. What glycemic index have? It's on the right side and the bottom. 20, that's what legumes have, very low glycemic index. In green vegetables, like broccoli, what number does it have? 50. Now you don't need to remember by memory all this table. just learn the principle. If it is processed, it's high glycemic. If it took a long time to cook, it's high glycemic. Watch out for things like cornflakes. Look at the numbers. Watch out for things like this white rice that is instant. That thing is like super high because they boil it and boil it and boil it and boil it and boil it, and they dry it and sell it to you. That's why it's so high in the glycemic index. And we talked about this previously. As you change the way you live, you can reverse many of these type 2 diabetes. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it, they will be your food. That's your guidelines for diabetes. Watch out, skipping breakfast raises the risk for diabetes. Many people don't eat breakfast because they ate too much food in the evening. The body says, you know what, don't give me more food, I'm tired of working the whole night. But if you start skipping the supper, you'll see how you're going to be hungry for breakfast. That's the way you teach your body to eat a nice, good breakfast. And skipping breakfast can also increase insulin resistance. So you're going to end up needing more medication and so forth. So especially if you're diabetic, don't skip your breakfast. In this one interesting study showing how these metabolic problems like diabetes out of control increases your risk of fertility problems. Fertility problems are big problems in today's world. So we need to go back to the diet that we were designed, that whole food plant-based diet. And here is the key if you want to lose weight. Here's the key. So we should avoid foods that have a bunch of calories in a small space. The king of caloric food is fats. So I need to decrease the amount of fat that I am eating. Notice also how junk food has also very high and refined carbohydrates. That's the REF-CC, that's what it means. Instead, I want to be eating my foods on this side. More fruits, more vegetables, more whole carbohydrates. You can use those carbohydrates as long as they're whole. Your legumes, and borderline there is those fatty proteins. So eat most of your foods of this side, unless your goal is to gain weight, then you want to add a few from the other side. Your goal is to maintain your weight, keep yourself more on the left side of things. And that's why it has colors. Like in the traffic, you want to, if it's green, you want to pass. If it's red, you want to get a ticket. Don't be running the reds. Look at this one. Drinking 1 or 2 Coca-Colas a day increases the risk of diabetes for more than 20%. Low-income households consume almost 2 servings of Coca-Cola per day. So instead of buying that Coca-Cola, get yourself some of the good fruit and vegetables that you find in this island. There's plenty of those. Today we were visiting a Rastafari farm. Man, they had all kinds of nice things there in that garden. So let's choose those legumes and those vegetables like cabbage, very nutritious, easy to prepare, and satisfying foods. Also, watch out with your order of your meals, especially diabetics. So the order of your meals should be First your vegetables, then your protein, your fats, and lastly your starches. And the reason why this works is because as food is processed, the coating that the intestines receive, if you first ate those vegetables, is going to decrease how fast the sugar goes into your bloodstream. Let me show you. Here, for example, 2 pieces of pineapple. Notice how it went high, but still it didn't go to the red. So as long as you're eating the pineapple the way that God made it, don't make it into a juice or something like that, then it really is going to cross into the red. Look at this one. If you do one of those smoothies with apple, banana, strawberries, notice that curve went like tremendously high. But if you add a protein there, some powdered beans or something like that, powdered soya, that will also do that effect. Notice how the same ingredients, it decreases that curve. Here, you can see how processed food has different effect. 2 apples that you made into juice, notice how it went to the red part. I don't want to get to the red part. If I make it into a smoothie, the same story. The blades release the glucose, increasing the glycemic index. But if you eat them whole, notice that they don't cross into the red. So, eat the fruit, only the fruit, and nothing but the fruit. Okay? Don't put them in blenders. Same story with mango. Look at this. Mango, you can eat mango, but don't eat dry mango if you're diabetic. That's too high glycemic food. It goes too high in your bloodstream. And you guys are so blessed with so many good fruits here.
Amen.
Take advantage of that. People pay a ton of money for these fruits outside of here. You would be shocked to see how much money people pay, and they're not even good because they're old, so many days it took to get them there. So eat your fruits, but eat them whole. If you're worried about your glucose and so forth, eat them together with beans. As you eat them together with beans, that decreases the glycemic index. Also, this is super important principle, you guys that love your rice, cool down your starches. So for example, when you cook your rice, don't eat them immediately. Put it on the fridge, wait till it cools down a little bit, then put it on the fridge, and by cooling down the starch, you change the molecule, so when you, again, rewarm that rice, the glycemic index decreases very much. And if you want to decrease it even more, do it 2 times. So make the rice, pull it down, warm it up, and cool it down again, and it decreases even further that glycemic index. So this is for the diabetics especially, don't eat that rice immediately as it is cooked. Cool it down so that you can cool down your starches. There's science about that. And here it is, what I was telling you about combining the foods. If you just eat rice, it's too much, you're going to the red. But if you eat the rice together with legumes like beans and a salad, notice how you decrease that curve. That's the way that you need to be eating your rice. And then the order that I was telling you, notice the difference here. If you first eat the pasta, then you eat the broccoli, notice how that glucose goes very high. But if you first eat your vegetables, we're talking about this, and then you eat your pasta, the curve decreases. So watch out. Follow the order carefully if you want to have optimize. Here is the same story. Bowl of rice versus bowl of rice and beans. Notice how the curve is very different. That's why in Weimar, in the Lifestyle Center, we serve legumes, beans and lentils and chickpeas at every meal. The diabetic is eating those legumes. Those are your very best friends for the diabetic. And here, mac and cheese, then goes up. But if you eat hummus, you know what hummus is? Hummus is made out of legumes. It's considered a legume. In carrots, which is a vegetable, notice how you decrease significantly that curve of diabetes. In closing, this is another one of my studies. Not growing up with both biological parents increases risky sexual behaviors. Use of alcohol in the household increases the depression of those children that are growing up in that household. And how those benzodiazepines decrease, and how exercise helps you ward off depression, says the study. And this one, sexual relationships outside of the context of marriage, how they increase the risk for mental health. This is my study. How exposure to lead increases mental health problems. How people that have a stroke, if they start making changes in their lifestyle, their mental health improves. And this one, very interesting. Look at this study. As church attendance went down, mental health problems went up. That's why it's so important, that principle in the Bible, don't forsake, the gathering of the brethren. So, in closing, we know that strong religious faith helps speedy recovery from depression. Depressed patients with high scores on intrinsic religiosity had faster remissions than patients with lower scores. Patients recover from depression 70% faster with every 10-point increase in their religiosity assessment, while external religiosity activity had less impact. Externally is the one that you just do the figure and so forth, but it's not inside. We need intrinsic religiosity. We need true faith in God that has that ability. So things like prayer. Notice that when you pray, it actually stimulates your frontal lobe. In this study, people were thinking about a loved one, and just the fact that you're thinking about a loved one, the frontal lobe would illuminate. And then in the bottom one, people were praying, and the frontal lobe would illuminate. And that's why the book Steps to Christ says prayer is opening our hearts to God just as we do with a friend. There's relationship about it. So the condition of the mind affects the health to a far greater degree than many realize. Many of the diseases from which men suffer are the result of mental depression. Grief, anxiety, discontent, remorse, guilt, distrust, all tend to break down the life forces and to invite decay and death. So, may we be able to make those right lifestyle changes. May we be able to identify those causes of depression, and by reversing them, that's how we're going to win the battle against depression. Thank you very much.
Thank now we open the floor for questioning. Any questions?
You say that you can change depression in 10 days.
Mhm.
Does that include detoxing someone from alcohol, caffeine, etc.?
Depending the substance.
Okay.
Caffeine would be one of them. Our patients that are using benzodiazepines, we first tell them, go and work with your doctor, start decreasing your dosage. Once it is in minimum dosages, then come to us. Also, people that are having struggles with alcohol and so forth, they need to work on that, then come to us, then that happens in 10 days. Certain drugs, like opioids and this type of strong drugs, you need to start working with that. Then once the dosage is decreased, then we can improve that depression quite fast. So yeah, depending on the substance that you are dealing with, that would be, if there's the 10-day rule or not. So, and then in the back.
Good night. So marijuana tea not supposed to be drink?
Marijuana tea. Yeah, marijuana tea will suppress your frontal lobe, that THC. You guys have wonderful other options here. I've seen the mint here, I've seen the peppermint, I've seen the lemongrass, and many other options of tea that you can use. Now, this is the interesting thing about marijuana. Sometimes this is encouraged for depression. When you have depression and you take marijuana, you actually feel better. But the problem is that the suppression that the marijuana is causing is actually going to give you the depression back and even worse. That's exactly what happens with the person that uses the marijuana. So not the best thing for your mental health. So watch out for that.
Very soon. Lemongrass is when you get fever or whatever. You use the lemongrass and you use some other foods. And fever foods and all you could use that easy.
Oh, yes, that's right. Good counsel. There's another hand here. Taking all over the place. There.
Thank you, Doc, for your presentation. I have a few questions. One about the mercury, and like how we have dentists here. One have many fillings filled with mercury or filling type. Is that mercury actually affecting one's health or not? Should the filling be removed?
That's right.
Or the teeth be pulled or something?
Well, it's something that is an ongoing discussion, that one, So if it's too many of them, I would consider that we need to do something about it. What happens is that it's an art to remove that. It's not easy to remove it because when you remove it, you actually expose much more. Also, dentists have ended up, some of them that used to work a lot with this, with dementia, because you're touching the thing, it's being absorbed and so forth. And you guys have an excellent dentist here, that could actually give you some good counseling about it. If you have questions about that, he can check those fillings and so forth and give you, some options and so forth.
It's usually a bigger problem when you remove them.
That's right, you expose them, That's right. You have a special thing and so forth. Yep. So it's complicated.
Thank you. My second question is about the rice and beans, especially how do you reduce the phytic acid
Which one?
The phytic acid.
Phytic?
Yeah.
Oh,
Acid
yeah.
and those, is there a certain way you cook it?
You need to learn to cook beans correctly. So one thing you need to do, you need to soak your beans overnight. Throw the water away, put new water, and then you cook them. Okay? That's a way that you decrease some of those substances that could be potentially problematic to your body. But don't just, take the beans dry like that and put them straight in the pot. You first need to go through that process. In that way, you're gonna have the wholesome nutrition and so forth. And something you can do with the beans, cook a nice big pot so you have a few days of beans to eat. Also, another option that is not so bad is the canned beans. That's actually not a bad option. They are already cooked there, and you just need to warm them up. They still have the nice low glycemic and so forth. So I've seen it in the stores here. They also have that canned version of the beans. So if you cannot cook them, that would be definitely a good choice for you to use that canned beans.
You mentioned about the overuse of devices. I think you mentioned that there was a picture on the screen with the person in the dark. And you said that can affect the frontal lobe as well. But I'm wondering, is it just the time spent on it, or is it, well, there might be linked, but is it the actual because you become addicted to that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is the addiction, because then you would see the direct link.
That's right. Yeah, so no question about it that time is definitely a factor. Sometimes people deceive themselves. Oh, I'm just using it half an hour. And no, you've been on the thing there 3-4 hours. And the thing is that these things have this algorithm so that it feeds your interest. And here you are, hooked, watching these things over and over and over. And that's not good for your mental health, So sometimes things like accountability, have some accountability partner which can tell you, hey, that's enough, and so forth. Sometimes a timer and so forth. And some people just need to stop using it, period. They cannot handle it. So yeah, watch out for that.
It's a dopamine, right? Dopamine.
The dopamine rush, that's right.
No more questions?
You mentioned the omega-3, and you said something about the fish. Where can I get some omega-3 if I'm not using the fish?
Good question. So fish don't generate their own omega-3. Fish, like we humans, need to eat our omega-3. Where do they get it? From algae. Algae is an excellent source of omega-3. Also, nuts like walnuts. And the king one is flaxseed. That's number one. Make sure that you grind it or smash it, because if you eat it whole, it's going to come out whole in your system. So you need to smash it or blend it to break it in order for our body to take advantage of it. And also, chia seed is also loaded with omega-3. And if you have access, I don't know, here in this island, this hemp seed, that stuff is also loaded with omega-3. So you have multiple options, It is not necessarily just one. Can you take too much? It is a fatty acid, So somebody that is struggling with their weight and so forth needs to be mothered, Plus they're expensive, There's a reason why God put that walnut in that hard shell. So you wouldn't need like 50 of those, Takes time to break the thing and get it out. So yeah, this little small handful, that will be more than enough. In our program, what we tell our patients is to use that grind flaxseed with every meal, 1 or 2 tablespoons of that. You can put it on water and drink it. You can spread it over your soup. You can spread it over your salad, over your porridge. You can find creative ways of doing that. Even you can do this with your bread. You can put some on your bread and then add a little bit of sweetener, and it tastes, nice to eat that. What about fish oil? They're asking here. Okay, so the challenge with fish oil is the following. Toxins accumulate in the fatty part of the fish. So you're actually concentrating the fatty part of it. Omega-3 is so effective, you cannot patent omega-3. So what they did, they patent a form to remove some of the toxicity from the omega-3, and they sell you that as medication. It's called Lovasa. And I remember when they first released this medication, they came to talk to us, and they come and visit the doctor's offices, and they would present us, the whole thing and so forth. So then we asked them a question. Okay, you guys are removing, some of the toxicity here. How much toxicity is left? And they were like, nobody has asked us that question. Why don't you write a letter to the manufacturer and ask that question? So we wrote a letter there, asking that question to the manufacturer. And the manufacturer told us it is impossible to remove all the toxicity. So even that one that has gone through a special process and so forth, there's still some toxicity there. Imagine the one that you buy in the normal, market and so forth. It has not gone through all that rigorous process and so forth. So you have other options today, Also, one other option for omega-3, especially the ones that need a little bit more concentrated form, is this omega-3 that they make with algae. And they concentrate that omega-3 has very good effect on your body. You want a more concentrated form.
Quick question on the walnuts or even the flaxseed. We have to break them down a little bit, right?
Yes.
So is there can you over process the flaxseed and the omega-3?
Well, the problem with the flaxseed is if you grind it and you leave it for too many days, it starts to get oxidized. So you want to grind that and then eat it soon after. Don't grind a bunch of them and leave it there because it does get oxidized and loses some of its properties.
Thanks again for a very enlightening session. I was a bit surprised that you mentioned hemp seed.
That's right.
Because my understanding is that there is some controversy surrounding it because it's a cousin of the marijuana plant.
That's right.
So can you explain that for us?
So
because for me, I prefer to stay far away.
You could probably eat the hemp, but the hemp with THC is probably not good, right?
That's right. It doesn't have that active ingredient of the marijuana, that THC. It looks like it in the outside. That's why some governments don't like it for you to grow it, because they get confused. Hey, are they growing marijuana or are they growing hemp? So that's why in some places they don't like you to grow that stuff. But yes, there's the one that doesn't have the THC, that's the one that is no problem. But if it has the active ingredient, be careful also with this oil that they make with this marijuana. That stuff also has the THC. Your skin absorbs that and has a frontal lobe suppressing effect.
Is there any good medicinal use of THC? Because I've had people that used to lecture me all the time say it's great, but that's because they like to use it.
In a very special cases, we may consider as medication. For example, there are certain cases of severe seizures. Sometimes that's the only thing that will stop it. We will consider in that case, So very specific, special cases we may consider it as medication, But as a general rule for everybody, I don't think it's a good fit. That's the issue.
No more questions, right? All right. Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. I have a little gift for you, all right?
Thank you.
On behalf of the Kayan Seventh-day Adventist Health Ministries, I just like to profoundly thank you for your selfless service that you have rendered to us this weekend to deepen our knowledge and our understanding about health versus disease, also about how because of many diseases and how our bodies have the ability to be restored to health, even if we follow the Proverbs 4:40 model, The condition of health is obedience. So we want to say thank you in a very special way, and I do hope that you continue to allow the Lord to use you, and may He bless you continually. Thank you so much. And now to the audience, I do have a gift or two to give away. I had some questions, but you have been mentioned in some books. We sold the book, yes, but you have been referenced and few in Spanish if you need any. A ministry of healing I have here, a diet, counsels on diet and food. So I may ask, if anyone in the audience really need one, because sometimes we have one already. If you don't have one and you really all right, and you really would like to read it, really, you can put up your hand. I see one hand, you'll get a gift for that. All right then. So, we have a visitor. I think you're a first-time visitor, right? Tonight is your first night? Teacher Naughty, yes? All right. Which one? All right. So I'm going to give you this book. It's called The Ministry of Healing. It's a very powerful book. I'll encourage you to read it. And as you read it, may you discover God and discover the purpose that He has for your life as well. All right. I didn't see your hand. I'm so sorry. I can be blind sometimes, so all right. Right. This one is called Counsels on Diet and Food. All right? So I do hope that it transforms your life as well. You can give into your life. Yes, I had the children covered as well. And she did put up her hand. What's the most surprising machine in the world? It's a living machinery. It is indeed your body, all right? So as you read that book, may you learn how to take care of that wonderful living machine. All right? All right. Thank you very much for all coming out. Let us stand for prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us to the end of this wonderful, impactful series. I hope, oh Heavenly Father, that what we have learned, we may put it into practice, to apply it to our lives, and not on our own strength, but to depend on you to help us along the way. We thank you for your loving mercy. Be with everyone as they depart, be with us as we depart. Grant us strength, traveling mercy in Jesus' name. Amen.